Everyone keeps saying Supergirl. Woman of Tomorrow is a disappointment. Some are calling it a box office failure. Others think it's just another weak start for the new DC universe. But what if that's exactly why people are missing its biggest purpose? Because beneath the slow pacing and uneven writing, this movie quietly plants the foundation for everything James Gunn's DCU is building next. And once you connect the clues about Krypton's destruction, Brainiac, Kryptonite, and Kara's emotional journey, the ending starts looking a whole lot different. Let's break it all down. Before we jump in, this is a full ending breakdown, so major spoilers ahead. If you've already seen the movie, let me know your biggest takeaway in the comments. Now let's get into it. The first thing that stood out to me is the movie's central theme. At its core, this isn't really about fighting pirates or hunting villains, it's about acceptance. When we meet Kara, she's around 23 years old. Unlike Superman, she actually remembers Krypton. She didn't just lose a planet, she lost her entire world, her family, her culture, her childhood, everything. For over 2 decades, she's been carrying that trauma, desperately trying to hold on to a place that no longer exists. That's the emotional conflict driving almost every decision she makes throughout the movie. Now here's where the movie changes Krypton's origin in a really interesting way. Instead of simply exploding for no reason, Krypton's core becomes unstable. The planet literally begins collapsing from the inside, and the film strongly suggests that Kryptonite itself is a byproduct of that catastrophic core failure. That's a fascinating twist. Rather than Kryptonite being just another rare space mineral, it's basically the scar left behind by Krypton's death. Fragments from that destroyed core scatter across space, contaminating everything around them. That's why surviving Kryptonians are naturally vulnerable to it. The movie also introduces modified Kryptonite weapons. Krem even uses specially engineered Kryptonite arrows designed specifically to fight Kryptonians, which immediately raises a bigger question. If someone like Krem has access to Kryptonite, where is it coming from? Someone has to be mining it. Someone has to be selling it. This doesn't feel like random pirate loot. It feels like an organized operation happening somewhere behind the scenes. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if characters like Lobo or even larger galactic organizations already know exactly where to obtain it. That could become incredibly important later in the DCU. But here's the theory that really caught my attention. Even though the movie never directly confirms it, I couldn't stop thinking about Brainiac because in multiple comics, animated stories, and even games like Injustice, Brainiac has been connected to Krypton's destruction in one way or another. Sometimes he's responsible. Sometimes he knows it's coming and chooses not to stop it. And in some versions, Brainiac is literally Krypton's own advanced AI that eventually turns against its creators. That's why several visual details in this movie immediately stood out. The escape pod designs, the hexagonal technology, even some of the glowing red mechanical patterns. They all carry subtle visual similarities to Brainiac's classic design language. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's coincidence. But considering Brainiac is expected to become one of DC's biggest future villains, these details feel far too specific to ignore. Honestly, it almost feels like this movie exists to prepare the audience before Brainiac officially arrives. Because if Brainiac really played any role in Krypton's destruction, then Kara's story becomes much more personal than Superman's. And that's another major difference the film emphasizes. Superman was incredibly lucky. He left Krypton as a baby. He never watched his home die. He never saw his parents disappear. He barely remembers the language. Everything he became happened on Earth. Earth is the only home he's ever truly known. Kara's experience couldn't be more different. She watched everything happen with her own eyes. She remembers every scream, every explosion, every loss. That's why she's emotionally scarred in ways Clark simply isn't. They may share the same symbol, but they carry completely different emotional wounds. And that's what makes Kara such a unique character. Eventually, her journey crosses paths with Ruthye, and this relationship becomes the emotional heart of the film. The movie changes Ruthie's comic origin quite a bit. In the original comic, she's the daughter of a miner. Here, she's tied much more closely to the legendary swordsmith mythology. The film even hints that she could eventually become a master swordsmith herself in the future. That's a pretty significant change, especially because the sword she's carrying has a completely different backstory compared to the comic. Instead of simply inheriting it, the movie reshapes its entire meaning around revenge. And then there's Krem. In the comics, Krem is mostly just another pirate, dangerous but relatively straightforward. The movie expands him considerably. Here, he commands an entire pirate crew. He's ruthless, organized, and constantly searching for valuable technology to steal, which explains why Kara's Kryptonian ship instantly becomes one of his biggest targets. Because to someone like Krem, Kryptonian technology is worth an absolute fortune. But attacking Kara creates consequences he never expected. And from that moment on, both Kara and Ruthye are pulled into the same revenge story. But here's where the story becomes much deeper than a simple revenge mission. At first, Kara isn't helping Ruthye because she believes in revenge. She's helping because she still believes finding Krypto is the closest thing she has left to finding home. Krypto isn't just a superpowered dog, he's the last living connection to Krypton, the last piece of her old life that still exists. So early on, Kara's motivation is actually pretty selfish. She's chasing what's left of her past, not necessarily fighting for Ruthie's future, but the longer they travel together, the more Kara begins to understand Ruthye. This isn't just another angry kid looking for revenge. This is a child whose entire family was taken away, someone who's carrying exactly the same emotional weight Kara has been carrying since Krypton died. That's why their relationship slowly changes. They're both grieving, they're both broken, they've simply chosen different ways to deal with that pain, and that's exactly why Ruthie's character matters, because she slowly forces Kara to confront a question she's been avoiding for years. Does revenge actually heal anything, or does it simply create another wound that never closes? This is where the movie introduces one of its strongest philosophical ideas. If Ruthye kills Krem, yes, she'll get justice. But will she ever get peace? Probably not, because the moment she takes that life, that decision becomes part of her forever. Instead of remembering her family with love, she may only remember the day she became a killer. And Kara realizes that before anyone else does. That's why she keeps trying to stop Ruthye. Not because Krem deserves mercy, he absolutely doesn't, but because Kara doesn't want Ruthie's innocence to disappear forever. There's a huge difference between defeating evil and allowing evil to change who you are. Then the movie introduces someone who believes the exact opposite, Lobo. And honestly, Lobo works almost like the devil sitting on Ruthie's shoulder. While Kara represents hope, Lobo represents rage. His philosophy is brutally simple. Someone murdered your family? Then kill them. Don't hesitate. Don't think. Just finish it. That's how Lobo sees the universe: strength, violence, survival. Nothing more. Meanwhile, Kara keeps pushing the exact opposite message. Don't let hatred define your future. Don't let revenge become your identity without directly saying it. The movie creates a classic angel versus devil dynamic. Kara on one side, Lobo on the other, both pulling Ruthye toward completely different futures. Honestly, that idea is one of my favorite parts of the film. Interestingly, in the original comic, Lobo wasn't even part of this story. The comic focused much more heavily on Kara and Ruthye alone. The movie adds Lobo to make this moral conflict more visible. Does it work? Partially, because while the concept is great, the execution feels a little underdeveloped. And that brings us to one of the movie's biggest problems. Ruthye should have been the emotional center of this entire story. Technically, she's the real protagonist. Everything revolves around the choice she eventually makes, not Kara, but unfortunately, the screenplay never gives her enough emotional depth. In the comics, Kara becomes Ruthie's inspiration. You genuinely feel that bond growing. Every conversation matters. Every lesson changes Ruthye. By the end, their relationship feels earned. The movie never quite reaches that level. You understand what it's trying to do, but you don't always feel it. And that's a huge difference. Even Kara herself feels slightly different compared to her comic version. The themes are still there: hope, healing, moving forward. But the emotional conviction behind those ideas doesn't always land the way it should. It's almost like the film keeps rushing through moments that needed more breathing room. That's probably why so many viewers walked away saying the story had good ideas, but something felt missing. And honestly, I think that's exactly what they're feeling. Not bad concepts, just weaker character writing. Eventually, everything leads to the confrontation with Krem, the moment Ruthye has dreamed about since the beginning. He's finally standing right in front of her. One decision changes everything. When Ruthye finally stands over Krem, weapon in hand, this is the moment the entire movie has been building toward. She can end it. No one's stopping her. No one's judging her. One strike, and the man who destroyed her family is gone forever. But then something changes. Instead of seeing Krem, she remembers her family, their smiles, their love, the life she lost, and suddenly she realizes something heartbreaking. If she kills him now, her happiest memories may forever become tied to this one violent moment. Instead of honoring the people she loved, she'd only remember the day revenge consumed her. That's why she lowers the weapon, not because Krem deserves forgiveness, but because she refuses to let him destroy one more thing, her own soul. And in that moment, Kara wins, not by defeating a villain, but by saving someone else's future. That's also why Ruthye appears wearing the House of El symbol later. Earlier in the movie, she's just surviving. She has no direction, no hope, no future beyond revenge. But after meeting Kara, she finally believes life can become something more. The S has never simply meant Superman. In many Kryptonian interpretations, it represents hope. And by the end, that's exactly what Kara gives Ruthye. A reason to keep living instead of simply seeking revenge. The symbolism is actually beautiful. The problem is that the emotional writing never fully earns it. The idea is powerful. The execution just isn't as strong as it could have been. Then comes the movie's most controversial decision. After Ruthye chooses mercy, Kara doesn't. She kills Krem herself. And honestly, this changes the character in a massive way. Because unlike Superman, Kara isn't following a strict no-kill rule. She grew up watching planets burn. She witnessed death before she was even an adult. Violence isn't an abstract concept to her, it's part of her reality. She has seen what monsters leave behind. And from her perspective, Krem isn't someone who's going to change. He's already destroyed countless innocent lives. He murdered Ruthie's family. He hurt Krypto. He's going to keep doing it again and again. So Kara makes a choice Clark probably never would. She ends it. Interestingly, this is very different from the comic. In the original story, Kara doesn't kill Krem. Instead, she leaves him stranded on a world where he'll spend centuries suffering the consequences of his own actions. The movie completely changes that ending, and that decision immediately creates a moral difference between Superman and Supergirl, something I actually think James Gunn may be setting up intentionally. Because imagine future DC movies where Clark argues that every life deserves another chance, while Kara believes some people simply cross a line they can never come back from. That's a fascinating conflict. It also opens the door for future stories, especially if Brainiac becomes the next major villain. Think about it. If Brainiac really had anything to do with Krypton's destruction, then he's responsible for the greatest trauma in Kara's entire life. He didn't just destroy a planet, he destroyed her childhood, her family, her identity. Now imagine Kara standing face to face with Brainiac one day. Will she spare him like she wanted Ruthye to spare Krem? Or will she decide Brainiac deserves exactly what Krem got? That's where her philosophy will truly be tested. The movie ends with Kara finally arriving on Earth, but emotionally, this is much bigger than simply reaching another planet. Throughout the film, she believed home was Krypton. Then she believed it was Krypto. By the ending, she finally understands the truth. Home isn't a place. Home is the people willing to stand beside you. It's the exact emotional lesson Odin once taught Thor. Asgard is not a place, it's a people. The movie gives Kara that same realization. Krypton may be gone, but she isn't alone anymore. Earth, Clark, Krypto, they're her family now. This is her new home, and that's exactly why the Brainiac tease matters. If Brainiac attacks Metropolis next, he won't just be threatening Superman, he'll be threatening Kara's second home, meaning she'll be fighting to protect something she finally learned to love. That raises the emotional stakes dramatically for the next chapter of the DC Universe. As for the movie itself, I don't think it's terrible. I also don't think it's great. The ideas are genuinely interesting. The themes are surprisingly mature. Acceptance, trauma, hope, revenge, healing, they're all here. The biggest issue is simply the writing. The emotional connections needed more time. Ruthye deserved stronger development. Lobo deserved a much larger role, and Kara's transformation needed more breathing room. The potential was absolutely there. The execution just couldn't quite reach it. Still, if James Gunn builds on these ideas moving forward, especially with Brainiac, this movie could end up being remembered as an important first chapter instead of a standalone disappointment. So now I want to hear your theory. If Brainiac really caused Krypton's destruction, should Supergirl spare him or finish what she started with Krem? Drop your answer in the comments, because I have a feeling that choice could define the future of the entire DC universe. Until next time, take care.